Hey, buddy, watch this.
Hello, hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Hearthstone is the game, and these are the 10 best cards from the One Night in Karazhan adventure. Starting off at number 10 is a card that surprises even me, and I made the list. There are a ton of cards that vied for this spot, and if you disagree with this choice, that's a completely reasonable opinion. There are about 5 other cards I had in this spot and swapped in and out, but ultimately I decided to go with the Ironforge Portal simply because it has been very relevant in control slash Nazoth style warrior decks that are really strong on the ladder right now, and Control Warrior as an archetype has been around forever in Hearthstone and probably won't ever go away just because of its hero power. And since Ironforge Portal works so well in that archetype and fills in a mana gap that Warrior has often lacked at 5 mana, I had to give Ironforge Portal the nod and squeeze it onto this list. The ability to gain 4 armor and summon a pretty relevant minion most of the time is just too good because it adds to that survivability and helps Warriors keep up in the mid game, which is somewhere they've always struggled. So that's why Ironforge Portal just barely made the cut. On to my number 9 spot, it is the Bookworm, the 6 mana 3/6 dragon with a very strong battle cry that allows you to destroy any minion with 3 or less attack. Now, it's true that this card isn't really being ran a ton right now at the time of this video's publication, but it has so many powerful dragon synergies, and dragon as an archetype doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. So this card's just fundamentally strong, has been successful in meta decks already, and I think it will continue to be successful for a very long time to come. So I had to give Bookworm this spot on the list. This is just a fundamentally strong, reasonable, well-designed card that's going to be good. Up next at the number 8 spot is the Hunter Minion Kindly Grandmother. This guy's just perfect for what hunters want to achieve. Not only is this minion a beast, but also the Death Rattle minion that it summons is a beast, so there's that perfect beast synergy. Plus, it's nice to have a minion for hunters that dissuades your opponents from killing it, simply because that means it sticks around or is more likely to stick around, setting up stuff like a Houndmaster or Kill Command synergy play. Also, it's just a sticky minion with a load of stats for 2 mana, so it helps hunters push that more aggressive killing your opponent style of play. For my number 7 card, I've got the 7 mana Firelance Portal, the Mage spell. This one's really just all about efficiency and packing a ton of value into a single card. So not only is this thing absurdly, stupidly strong in Arena, but it's also seen a lot of success in Tempo Mage on the ladder, which is a very strong, powerful deck. Even today, Firelance Portal is just very, very good at what it does. On to my number 6 choice, it's another Hunter minion this time around. It's the Cloaked Huntress, the 3 mana 3/4 that has an incredible effect. Your secrets only cost 0 mana. That's right, that means you can play a seemingly infinite number of secrets as long as you have a Cloaked Huntress on board. And this card has single-handedly created the Secret Hunter, which is really sort of just a mid-range hunter, but shifted a little bit more towards secrets, which is a very frustrating deck to play against, but also a very powerful deck. So cards with really, really strong effects like this never really go away just because they open up so many new kinds and types of play. The Cloaked Huntress is not only good now, but I think she'll be good as long as she's in standard format because the stats are there and the effect is so stupidly strong. And now onto my top 5 is another card that's created a new deck archetype, or at least shifted a common popular one in a new direction. This is the Warlock minion, the Silverware Golem, 3 mana 3/3. If it's discarded, this minion is actually played for free, which has made discard Zulak the most prominent form of that long time deck, just because it's so strong to get a 3 mana 3/3 out totally for free and swarming the board, which is already what Zoo likes to do. So between all the other discard synergies that were introduced both in Karazhan and in past expansions, Silverware Golem is a fundamental centerpiece for that style of deck, and of course Zoo is a very powerful deck. You could arguably put Malchezaar's Imp in this spot since they've both had a similar influence on that kind of deck, but I think Silverware Golem is the more oppressive and more frustrating one to play against just because it's all about stats and bodies, and that's what Zoo really cares about ultimately. So I gave it the nod here over Malchezaar's Imp, although clearly both cards are very strong and meet the same needs of a changing archetype in Discard Zoo. My number 4 choice goes to the Arcane Giant, the new giant type of card introduced in Karazhan. This one, of course, is an 8/8 like all giants, and it costs 1 less for each spell that you've cast this game. So Arcane Giants have become popular in basically any deck that runs a ton of spells. Most commonly in things like Malygos Druid, just to give you another big body and another sort of late game close or finisher on top of Malygos, because that deck just runs a stupid amount of spells, meaning this is basically always free after at least the mid to late game. But also Arcane Giant has been seen in other kinds of decks as well. It's popped up in Rogue and in Warrior. And ultimately a card with this good of a body and this strong of a cost reduction effect is always going to be relevant as long as it's in standard format. So even if it hasn't totally blown up across every deck, I think this is still going to be a card that shows up pretty commonly and frustrates opponents for a very long time to come. Moving on to my top 3, it shouldn't be surprising to see some Shaman cards topping the list. The first of which is the Maelstrom Portal. Shaman has been an incredibly dominant deck in the One Night in Karazhan meta. It's everywhere, it's far and away the strongest deck, and in part that's thanks to a card like this one, which is so surprisingly good when bundled with spell damage, just because it becomes a very cheap and efficient board clear or pseudo board clear that also summons you a minion, making it an incredibly swingy card that just so happens to fit the mid-range Shaman style of deck nearly perfectly, especially when bundled with a spell damage package that is so darn popular. And of course, that spell damage package is so popular because of my number 2 card on the list, Spirit Claws. This card is so stupidly strong. For only 1 mana, Shamans get an incredible 3 durability weapon that has a 1 attack value at its base, but often gets to attack for 3 damage instead, meaning it's very good at contesting an early game board of your opponents, but also can just be used sometimes as damage to kill your opponents off, because Shaman can pull together surprising amounts of burst damage on the back of various spells, weapons, and of course its giant, incredibly cheap minions as well. So both Maelstrom Portal and Spirit Claws have redefined the way mid-range Shaman worked, but the deck has remained stupidly strong and incredibly dominant in the Karazhan meta, thanks to primarily this card. It's so very good. But I can't in good conscience give Spirit Claws the number 1 spot because it is restricted to only a single class. The number 1 spot for me has to go to the minion Barnes. This guy is the strongest legendary from One Night in Karazhan, and in my opinion, the very strongest card in the entire set as well. And I think that's reflected by just how many different decks find a way to squeeze this guy into them, as long as they have some sort of high-value minions with an active card effect, Ragnaros or Malygos or Ysera or any other 1,000 different cards. There's a reason to run Barnes, because not only does he give you solid stats and sort of an instant board presence for 4 mana, which is nice and valuable on its own, but there's that chance that you hit the Tyrian Forge Ring, that you hit the Emperor Thaurissan, that you hit the Ragnaros, and suddenly you have a surprisingly powerful minion coming out in the mid-game that's offering you all kinds of passive value, whether that's the weapon from Tyrian after it dies, so that's the instant 8 damage shot from the cheap Ragnaros, whether that's the cost reduction from an extra Emperor Thaurissan, whether it's something that sets up crazy spell power for Malygos. There's 1,000 different combinations, so many different ways that Barnes can hit a home run and just instantly win you the game on turn 4. And frankly, even when Barnes whiffs and he fails and he just gets you a 1/1, he's still an average playable card. So since the very worst scenario is still okay, and the very best scenario is an instant game-winning play, that makes Barnes a very smart inclusion in so many different kinds of decks, and he feels like a very frustrating and difficult card to play against, and he often feels very rewarding when you play him. This is just a fundamentally powerful card that's going to be good virtually forever. So Barnes, we kind of hate you, we kind of love you, but I think it's undeniable that you are the best card from One Night in Karazhan. And that's going to do it for my list. Those are my 10 best One Night in Karazhan cards. I'm sure you have some thoughts of your own. Perhaps you disagree with the order of my list. Perhaps I missed some cards that you think certainly deserve to make the cut. And I would be understanding of that because this was actually a pretty tough list to determine, particularly spots like 10 through 7. I had a lot of different cards slotted in, so I probably won't disagree if you recommend some changes. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on the best cards. What deserved to be on the list? What deserves to top the list? Did I get the order all wrong? Did I forget anything super good that deserved to be here? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.